Count, a huge male German shepherd, began sleeping in the snow near his kennel. After 3 hours of observation, his owner decided to find out the reason. What he found inside was absolutely shocking. Andriy was stunned when the dog growled at him. He had raised Count from a tiny puppy, and the two had always been best friends. He approached the booth again, and the dog reacted in exactly the same way. He stood between him and the kennel, growling quietly, as if warning Andriy not to come closer. Snow crunched under the man's feet as he stepped to the side. At that very moment, Count stopped growling. "What is it, boy? What do you have there?" he asked quietly. Count wagged his tail and lowered his head, then walked over to Andriy to have him scratch him. Andriy decided that the conflict was over, so he took a step to the side and headed back to the booth. But Count stood before him again and assumed a threatening pose. Andriy realized that it was better to leave the dog, since what was in the booth was clearly important to Count. It all started in the summer of last year. Andriy, who was fond of carpentry, built a magnificent kennel for Count. It had a canopy and enough space inside to shelter the dog from the snow that Andriy expected to start falling in early December. And so it happened. In early December, the temperature dropped, and the first snow fell. Count instinctively understood that the structure built by Andriy was intended for him, and in a matter of minutes, he turned it into his personal fortress. That evening, Andriy looked through a crack in the curtains in his bedroom and saw that Count was lying on the porch of his kennel, his head resting on his front paws, as if he were on guard. It had been snowing lightly for about an hour, and Andriy decided to check on the dog again. Count was still on the porch of his kennel. There was a severe frost outside, but he did not move from his place. It was really weird. The next morning, Andriy went out to the booth again. Count jumped to his feet when he saw his master, but when Andriy tried to approach the entrance to the kennel, the dog stood in front of him again, just like yesterday. The German shepherd then looked at his owner pleadingly, as if to say, "Please don't try again." As soon as Andriy made a move towards the entrance to the booth, a quiet growl was heard. The dog tried to prevent Andriy from looking inside the kennel. The man was puzzled. He had no idea what to think about Count's strange behavior, but then he came up with a plan. He walked quickly to the kitchen door. Once inside, he took a steak from the refrigerator and began cutting it into small pieces. This was Count's favorite delicacy. The dog wouldn't be able to resist a bowl of finely chopped steak. Andriy was sure of that. The only difficulty was convincing Count to come into the kitchen. With a bowl in his hand, Andriy went outside and approached the booth. As before, Count jumped up to greet him. Andriy squatted down and played with the dog. Then he took the bowl from behind his back and gave it to Count to sniff. The dog almost jumped with excitement. Nothing brought him such delight as pieces of fresh steak. But when Andriy walked away with the bowl and called Count, it looked suspicious. Usually he got a treat at his booth, but now the owner wanted him to go to the kitchen to get it. Count was confused. He looked back at the booth and whined quietly. Then, apparently deciding that everything would be fine, he followed Andriy into the kitchen. The dog ran after its owner and jumped happily, not taking its eyes off the bowl. The first part of Andriy's plan was carried out to perfection. He put the bowl on the floor in the far corner of the kitchen and stroked the dog again. Count began to eat. He didn't try to eat the whole steak at once like most other dogs would have done. Instead, he seemed to enjoy every bite. And now it was time for the second part of his plan. Andriy stood up slowly. He walked with his back to the door, keeping his eyes on the dog. Count paid no attention to him. The man walked out of the kitchen and closed the door behind him. The second part was successfully completed. He headed towards the kennel. Count realized the trick as soon as the kitchen door closed. The dog scratched at the door and whined pitifully. When it became clear that Andriy was ignoring him, he ran into the living room. There were large windows, and Count could see his booth from there. He saw Andriy walking towards it, and this upset him even more. He barked louder and jumped up to the window. Andriy heard a noise inside the house and turned around. There was Count, glaring at him. Andriy didn't like that he had to lure the dog into the house and lock him there. It felt like a betrayal of his best friend, like it would somehow destroy the trust that had been built between them since Count was a puppy. But he simply had to see what Count was guarding inside his booth. Desperate situations call for desperate measures, He decided and moved on towards the booth. When he reached the kennel, Count became furious. For a few seconds, Andrei was sure that Count would break the glass and jump out. The dog's anger seemed to grow as Andrei approached the entrance to the kennel. The man dropped to his knees and looked inside. Now he was completely defenseless, because his head and arms could not fit through the hole at the same time. If something inside attacked him, he would be completely defenseless. But curiosity got the better of him. As soon as his eyes adjusted to the darkness inside, he went into shock. There was a raccoon inside. For a moment, Andrei was at a loss. In a normal situation, the raccoon would have simply run away. But this one stood its ground just like Count. It was defending something. Then Andrei saw it. At first, he noticed only one baby raccoon. Then he saw the rest. In total, he counted 6 babies. Andrei immediately realized that the mother raccoon needed a safe place to give birth when the early snow began to fall. And being a gentleman, Count sacrificed his home for her and then began to guard her. Andrei couldn't help but smile, realizing that Count, a loyal and kind dog, had made a huge sacrifice for the sake of the mother raccoon and her cubs. He shared his space and became their protector, even against his owner. As the days turned into weeks, Andrei decided to create a cozy refuge for the family of raccoons nearby. He made a comfortable nest and ensured they had a safe place to live. Count, understanding the situation, took back his kennel but always kept a watchful eye on them, always ready to share his shelter. Dear viewers, have you ever seen animals of different species take care of each other? Please tell us in the comments. And if you liked this video, then like it and subscribe to our channel. Goodbye.